The mockery, the grand conclave of the Galactic Assembly, was a sight that could make any species feel small. Crystalline spires reached toward artificial stars, while delegates from 1,000 worlds floated, walked, or slithered through corridors designed to accommodate every known form of life. Ambassador Maria Chen stood at the presentation platform, her heart steady despite the weight of representing all of humanity. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. 3 years refining Earth's prototype starship design, consulting with humanity's brightest minds, and learning the complex etiquette of galactic diplomacy. Now, as holographic blueprints of the human vessel rotated above the assembly floor, she could feel the dismissive energy radiating from the gathered aliens. The Vraxian delegate, a towering creature of living metal and plasma, was the first to speak. Its voice resonated through the chamber like grinding gears. "This design is amusing," it said, each word dripping with condescension. "The humans have essentially welded salvaged components together and called it innovation." Laughter rippled through the assembly. Not the polite chuckle of diplomatic courtesy, but genuine mocking amusement. Chen maintained her composure as she watched her life's work being reduced to a punchline. "With respect, Excellency Vrax Prime," Chen began, "our approach emphasizes adaptability and resourcefulness. While we lack the advanced manufacturing capabilities of older civilizations, we've developed unique solutions that—" "Solutions?" interrupted the Zalathi representative, its tentacles writhing in what Chen recognized as their species' equivalent of laughter. "You've created a ship from spare parts and duct tape. This isn't innovation, it's desperation." The assembly erupted in agreement. Delegates from the mighty Corvan hegemony, the ancient Etherian collective, and dozens of other advanced civilizations all found unity in their derision of Earth's offering. Chen watched as her holographic ship, humanity's hope for recognition, became the subject of increasingly cruel jokes. The Vraxian delegate raised one of its appendages for silence. "Perhaps we should thank the humans," it said, its tone patronizing. "They've reminded us all why certain species are meant to lead while others serve more suitable purposes. Earth produces excellent agricultural goods. Perhaps they should focus on that instead of playing with technology they don't understand." Chen felt her jaw tighten, but she forced herself to remain diplomatic. "Our design philosophy comes from centuries of making do with limited resources. We've learned to see potential where others see waste. This prototype might not look like your vessels, but nothing." The Vraxian cut her off. "The assembly has more pressing matters than entertaining the fantasies of newcomers." Motion to dismiss the human proposal. The vote was swift and unanimous. Not a single delegate spoke in Earth's favor. As Chen gathered her materials and prepared to leave, she heard the whispers following her. "Scrapyard builders," someone said. "Junk collectors thinking they're engineers," added another. She paused at the chamber's exit and turned back to face the assembly one final time. "When the time comes, and it will come, when your perfect ships and perfect strategies fail you, remember this moment. Remember that you laughed at those who learned to survive with nothing." The assembly ignored her words, already moving on to the next agenda item. Chen left the grand conclave with her head held high, but inside, she burned with determination. Earth would remember this humiliation. 3 months later, the galaxy changed forever. The Shadowmaw swarm appeared from dark space without warning, their biomechanical ships defying every known law of physics. They moved like living organisms, adapting to each attack, learning from every defensive strategy. Within days, they had consumed 3 frontier colonies. Within weeks, they had destroyed a Corvan battle fleet that had stood undefeated for 500 years. The Vraxian Empire, with all its technological superiority, mobilized its greatest armada. 5,000 ships, each a masterpiece of engineering, each worth more than Earth's entire gross planetary product. They met the Shadowmaw at the edge of the Kepler system, confident in their superiority. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Vraxian armada was reduced to drifting debris. The Shadowmaw had adapted to their weapons, learned their tactics, and turned their own strengths against them. The perfect ships with perfect weapons had been perfectly useless. On Earth, in a classified facility beneath the Mojave Desert, Captain Ava Rodriguez stood before the ship that the galaxy had mocked. The patchwork didn't look like much. Its hull was indeed a collection of salvaged components, human ingenuity, And yes, in some places, actual duct tape. But Rodriguez knew something the galaxy's elite didn't understand. Sometimes the greatest strength came from embracing your weaknesses. Status report, Rodriguez commanded as she entered the bridge. The crew, a collection of misfits and geniuses who'd never fit into traditional military structures, snapped to attention in their own chaotic way. Engines are mostly stable, reported Chief Engineer Tommy Nakamura, a man who'd been kicked out of 3 prestigious academies for unorthodox thinking. I've rigged the Vraxian power core we bought on the black market to our fusion reactors. It shouldn't work, but it does. Weapons? Rodriguez asked. Loaded and weird as ever, grinned Weapons Officer Sarah Okonkwo. We've got everything from modified mining lasers to that Zalathi torpedo we reverse-engineered from a crashed scout ship. Nothing matches, nothing's optimal, but everything works. Rodriguez smiled. That was the secret the galaxy's powers had missed. They built their ships to be perfect, unified systems. Every component was designed to work in harmony with every other component. It was elegant, sophisticated, and completely rigid. When faced with an enemy that could adapt, their perfect systems had no flexibility. The patchwork, on the other hand, was chaos incarnate. Nothing matched because everything had been salvaged, modified, or improvised. The ship had 17 different weapon types, each operating on different principles. The shields were a hodgepodge of technologies that shouldn't work together but somehow did. The engine could switch between 5 different propulsion methods at will. We've received the emergency beacon from Kepler Station, Communications Officer Chen Li announced. Maria Chen's daughter, who had joined the military the day after her mother's humiliation. The Shadow Maw will reach them in 12 hours. The Vraxians are requesting assistance from anyone who can respond. Rodriguez looked at her crew. Each of them had been rejected by the traditional military establishments. Each had been told their ideas were too radical, too unconventional, too human. Now those same qualities might be the galaxy's only hope. Set course for Kepler Station, Rodriguez ordered. Maximum, whatever speed we can manage without exploding. Nakamura laughed. That's about 60% of what the Vraxians would consider safe. Perfect, Rodriguez replied. Let's show them what humanity's junk can do. As the patchwork prepared to launch, none of the crew knew if they would survive the next 24 hours. The ship shuddered and groaned as its mismatched systems powered up, sounding more like a dying whale than a starship. But beneath the chaos there was something else. Potential. The same potential that had allowed humanity to reach the stars with technology, decades behind everyone else. The same potential that the galaxy had mocked. The launch sequence began, and Rodriguez strapped herself into the captain's chair, a literal car seat from a 2089 Tesla that Nakamura had welded to the deck because it was comfortable. Around her, her crew took their positions at consoles cobbled together from gaming rigs, military hardware, and alien technology they barely understood. This is Captain Rodriguez to Earth Command, she announced. The patchwork is ready to launch. Tell Ambassador Chen we're about to make her proud. The response came back immediately, Maria Chen's voice carrying across the void. Captain, the galaxy laughed at us. Show them why that was a mistake. Rodriguez grinned as the countdown reached 0. With pleasure, Ambassador. Patchwork launching in 3, 2, 1. The ship that the galaxy had dismissed as junk erupted from Earth's atmosphere, its mismatched engines screaming in harmony. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't elegant, but it was moving faster than anything its size should be able to move. The patchwork was heading to war, carrying humanity's greatest weapon, the ability to make the impossible work when everything else failed. The reckoning Kepler Station was dying. The massive space city, home to 40 million souls from dozens of species, shuddered as another Shadow Maw bioship latched onto its hull. Through the transparent aluminum windows of the command center, Station Commander Vrax 7 watched his empire's finest warriors fall like insects before an unstoppable predator. 17th Fleet is gone, his tactical officer reported, voice hollow with disbelief. The Shadow Maw adapted to their plasma cannons in under 3 minutes. Vrax 7's metallic form pulsed with frustrated energy. Everything they threw at the Shadow Maw was turned against them. The creatures, or ships, nobody was quite sure which, learned from every attack, evolved past every defense. They were not just defeating the galaxy's greatest powers. They were using their own strengths as weapons against them. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're detecting an incoming vessel. It's unusual." On the main display, a ship appeared that defied every principle of stellar engineering. It looked like someone had crashed a dozen different vessels together and welded them into a vaguely ship-shaped mass. Sensor readings were chaotic. The vessel was simultaneously registering as a Vraxian cruiser, a Zalathi fighter, a human transport, and several other classifications. "What in the void is that?" Vrax 7 demanded. "It's broadcasting Earth identification codes, sir. The ship calls itself Patchwork." A collective groan went through the command center. In their darkest hour, the humans had sent their joke of a ship. Vrax 7 felt his hope diminish further. "Ignore them. Focus on—" His words were cut short as the Patchwork did something impossible. It flew directly through a shadow maw formation, and instead of being destroyed, it emerged on the other side unharmed. The shadow maw bioships, which had adapted to every weapon in the known galaxy, seemed confused by the human vessel. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the communication system. "Kepler Station, this is Patchwork. We're here to help. Recommend you hold your fire and let us work." "This is Commander Vrax 7. Your assistance is not required. Return to Earth before you're destroyed." Rodriguez laughed, actually laughed in the face of annihilation. "With respect, Commander, your perfect ships aren't doing so well. Maybe it's time to try something imperfect." Before Vrax 7 could respond, the Patchwork engaged the Shadow Maw. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations, assuming anyone survived to build them. The human ship fired, but not with the coordinated volleys the Shadow Maw had learned to anticipate. Instead, it unleashed chaos. A mining laser here, a Zalathi torpedo there, a projectile weapon that appeared to be firing actual solid slugs. Each weapon operated on completely different principles, fired at random intervals, with no discernible pattern. The Shadow Maw bioships, which had adapted to the galaxy's most sophisticated weapons, couldn't adapt to chaos. They tried to evolve defenses, but every time they adjusted to one weapon type, 3 different ones hit them. It was like trying to solve an equation where the variables kept changing randomly. "They're retreating," the tactical officer gasped. "The Shadow Maw are pulling back from the Patchwork." But Rodriguez wasn't done. Her voice came over the open channel, addressing not just Kepler Station but every ship in the area. "Listen up, everyone. The Shadow Maw adapt to patterns, perfection, predictability. So we're going to give them the opposite. All ships, disable your targeting computers. Fire manually. Fire randomly. Make mistakes on purpose." "That's insane," Vrax 7 protested. "No," Rodriguez replied. "Insane is doing the same thing and expecting different results. You've been fighting with perfection. Time to fight with chaos." Desperate and out of options, a few damaged Vraxian cruisers followed her advice. They disabled their perfect targeting systems and let their crews fire manually. The results were immediate. Their hit rate dropped, but the hits they did score actually did damage. The Shadow Maw couldn't adapt to attacks that had no pattern. Inside the Patchwork, the crew worked in controlled chaos. Nakamura was literally switching engine types mid-flight, making the ship's movement unpredictable even to its own crew. Okonkwo was firing weapons based on gut feeling rather than calculated targeting solutions. Chen Li was broadcasting everything from ancient Earth music to random number sequences, filling the electromagnetic spectrum with noise that confused the Shadow Maw's coordination. "Captain," Nakamura shouted, "I've got an idea, but it's completely insane." Rodriguez grinned. "Those are my favorite kind. The Shadow Maw adapt to our weapons, right? So what if we give them something they can't adapt to because it's already broken?" He pulled up a schematic on his jury-rigged console. "I can overload our Patchwork reactor, create an energy pulse that's simultaneously every type of energy we've got. Vraxian plasma, human fusion, Zalathi quantum flux, all at once, all unstable." "That could destroy us," Chen Li pointed out. 60-40 odds in our favor, Nakamura calculated. "Good enough," Rodriguez decided. "Do it." As Nakamura worked his impossible magic, Rodriguez opened a channel to the galaxy, not just to the ships present, but to every receiver in range. "This is Captain Eva Rodriguez of Earth. You laughed at us. You called us junk collectors, scrap dealers, primitive tinkerers. You were right. We are all those things. But we're also survivors. We're the species that learned to make fire from nothing, that reached the stars with technology you'd consider ancient, that looked at the impossible and said, let's try anyway." The Patchwork's reactor began to glow with an impossible light, colors that shouldn't exist swirling together in a maelstrom of energy. "The Shadow Maw defeated you because you're perfect," Rodriguez continued. "Your ships are masterpieces, your strategies flawless, your technology supreme. But perfection is rigid. It can't adapt, can't improvise, can't imagine being anything other than what it is. We humans? We're messy, chaotic, imperfect. We build ships from garbage and held together with hope. And that's exactly why we're going to win." The pulse erupted from the Patchwork like a star being born. It was everything and nothing, order and chaos. Every type of energy the ship had ever absorbed or generated released in one impossible moment. The Shadow Maw bioships, faced with something that defied every law of physics they had evolved to understand, simply stopped. Their adaptive systems overloaded, trying to process something that couldn't be processed. In that moment of confusion, every ship in the area, Vraxian, Corvin, Zalathi, and others, fired everything they had, without patterns, without coordination, without perfection. Just raw, desperate, chaotic violence. And it worked. The Shadow Maw swarm, which had seemed invincible hours before, broke apart and fled into dark space. They had conquered perfection, but they couldn't conquer chaos. As the dust settled, Kepler Station still stood, damaged, scarred, but alive. The Patchwork floated in space, half its systems fried from the pulse, held together by little more than determination and actual duct tape in some places. But it was still there, still functioning in its own impossible way. Commander Vrac 7's image appeared on the Patchwork's main screen, or rather, the tablet computer Nakamura had taped to the wall and designated as the main screen. The living metal being's expression was unreadable, but his voice carried something it never had before: respect. "Captain Rodriguez," he began formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Assembly, I offer our gratitude and our apologies." Rodriguez leaned back in her Tesla seat, exhausted but victorious. "Save your apologies, Commander. Just remember this day. Remember that the galaxy's salvation came from the species you mocked, flying a ship you laughed at, using tactics you'd never consider." She paused, then added with a grin, "And next time Earth presents a prototype, maybe listen instead of laughing." The transmission ended, but the message had been received throughout the galaxy. The humans, with their junked-together ship and impossible ideas, had saved them all. The species that collected scraps and made them work had defeated an enemy that had bested the galaxy's finest. In the weeks that followed, Earth received more diplomatic visitors than in its entire previous history. Everyone wanted to understand human engineering, human creativity, human chaos. The Patchwork was studied, copied, and ultimately misunderstood by those trying to replicate its success. They missed the point. It wasn't about the ship itself, but about the philosophy behind it. The willingness to embrace imperfection, to find strength in weakness, to make the impossible possible through sheer stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Ambassador Maria Chen stood once again before the Galactic Assembly, but this time nobody laughed. The same delegates who had mocked her now hung on her every word as she explained Earth's philosophy of adaptive engineering. "You sought perfection," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent chamber. "We sought solutions. You built monuments to your superiority. We built tools for survival. The difference saved the galaxy." The Vraxian delegate, the same one who had dismissed Earth's prototype months before, stood to speak. "We were fools." It admitted, the word seemingly painful for the proud being. "We confused sophistication with superiority, elegance with effectiveness. Earth has taught us that sometimes the greatest strength comes from acknowledging weakness." Chen nodded graciously. The galaxy is vast, with room for all approaches. Perfection has its place, but so does chaos. Order has its strength, but so does adaptability. Perhaps instead of competing to see who is superior, we should be learning from our differences. And so began a new era in galactic civilization. Earth's shipyards, once dismissed as scrapyards, became centers of innovation where species from across the galaxy came to learn the art of making something from nothing. The patchwork, retired from service but preserved as a monument, became a symbol of humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy. The proof that with enough creativity, determination, and duct tape, even the impossible becomes possible.